Me? That sounds good? Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you for having me. This is the biggest audience I've done a presentation for, so apologies if I'm a little bit nervous. But I'm really grateful to be able to speak about my experience here and share this with you. I spent about 3.5 months in the West Bank of Palestine this past spring and summer, and I know it's kind of a sensitive topic these days, and so I appreciate your openness to listen, and my intent really isn't to get too deep into the history and politics and everything. I'll give a brief historical overview just so that you have some context for the work I was doing there, but really my intent is to kind of speak about my personal experience and in particular about the family that I stayed with the majority of my time. So, like I said, I'll give a brief historical context, talk a little bit about the type of work that I was doing, the Abu Na'im family that I stayed with, and then some ways to get involved and any questions if we have time. First, though, I do want to acknowledge that we're here on the unceded territory of the Miwok and Patwin peoples. They've stewarded this land for thousands of years, but it was taken from them by genocide and forced removal. Despite this, they're still here and resiliently working to heal their communities, revitalize their languages and cultures, and restore their rightful place in sacred relationship with the land. I think this is important to acknowledge in general, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. But I think in particular today, since I'm talking about a situation that's very similar in the West Bank, it's kind of good to keep that in our hearts and minds as well. So very brief historical overview. In 1917, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Britain took over what was the land of Palestine. At this time, there were about 6% of the population that was Jewish. The rest was Christian and Arab, and they all were living together in relative peace as neighbors. And around this time, Zionism was also starting as a political ideology in Europe that called for the creation of a Jewish homeland. And so Jewish migration started to begin to Palestine at that time during the British Mandate. In 1947, following World War II, in the Holocaust, understandably, there was a wave of international support for the idea of a Jewish homeland. So there was increased migration for Jews to Palestine at that point, but that also created more tension as Zionist militias started to form and forced some Palestinians to flee their homes. And so kind of in the context of increasing violence, Britain handed it over to the UN to decide what to do with it, and they adopted Resolution 181, which called for the partition of Palestine into a Jewish state, which would be 55% of the land, and an Arab state, which would be 45% of the land, with Jerusalem as a separate international territory. However, this plan was never implemented on the ground, because in 1948, right as the British Mandate was about to withdraw, the State of Israel was declared, and about 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly removed from their homes and permanently displaced. 78% of the land was taken by the Zionist militias and became the State of Israel, and the remaining 22% of the land was left for Palestine, and that was divided between the West Bank and Gaza. This event in 1948 is known as the Nakba in Arabic, which means catastrophe. The next major event was 1967. A further 300,000 Palestinians were displaced during the Six-Day War, and during this time, Israel occupied Gaza, the West Bank, as well as the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula and the Syrian Golan Heights. And Sinai has since been returned to Egypt during a peace treaty, but to this day, the Golan Heights, Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem are still under full Israeli military occupation. So give a brief snapshot of what life in the occupied West Bank is like. There are Israeli outposts and settlements that are forcing Palestinians off of their land. Settler violence and harassment is daily and supported by the Israeli occupation forces. There's drones, constant surveillance and monitoring by the IOF. A lot of restriction of movement via road closures, checkpoints, the apartheid wall, which there's a photo of that that I took in Bethlehem, and then home demolitions as well. It was very common. I saw multiple times when I was there, tractors or bulldozers with the Israeli military would just show up at someone's home in the morning, tell them they have 10 minutes to get their belongings out, and then start destroying the home. And it's very difficult for Palestinians, especially in rural areas, to get building permits to build anything new. Settlements, I'll talk a little bit about that. Basically, it's on the West Bank in Jerusalem, land that you saw that was supposed to be left for Palestine. Israeli settlers are now encroaching on that land even more, encouraged actively by the Israeli government. They're illegal under international law, and there are about 700,000 illegal settlers, Israeli settlers, on the West Bank land in East Jerusalem right now. And then there are also settlement outposts, which are like the beginnings of new settlements. They usually just start with maybe a couple tents or sheep pens or trailers with people living there, and then slowly they're connected to the settlements via paved roads, electrical lines, and just fragmenting the West Bank more and more and cutting communities off from each other. And these are illegal even under Israeli law, but this current far-right government is encouraging them actively, giving them weapons, military training, subsidies, things like that. So the work I went there to do with an organization, and there are multiple organizations that do this type of work. It's called Protective Presence or Solidarity Presence. The idea basically is that the presence of international passport holders can help deter and de-escalate violence and harassment, and also to document it when it does happen and show that it's not the Palestinians initiating it. Another big part of it is just to kind of give them the message of international support that we see you, we hear you, and we stand with you in your struggle, because they feel very forgotten by a lot of the world these days. And the organization I went with also is very strictly Palestinian-led. We hold that we are not there to teach Palestinians nonviolent resistance. They have been nonviolently resisting for decades. We're there to stand with them and to support them and go only where we're invited with particular families. Spend the night with families, go with them when they graze their sheep to and from harvesting their fields or children to school. All right, I know that was a lot of factual information, so thank you for bearing with me. I want to pivot now and talk a little bit more just about the family that I stayed with and my more personal experience there with the Abu Naim family. They live outside of the village of Al-Mughayr. This family really kind of just adopted me and welcomed me in, them and their whole community. I stayed with them. I was in the West Bank 3.5 months, and I stayed with them for 2.5 months of that time and really barely left at all. These are the grandparents there, Abu Hammam and Hammam, and one of their granddaughters, Fadda. They live with their eldest son and his wife and 5 kids at a home where I'll show you. And they have 3 other grown children who are married with kids, and they all come around almost every day. So it's a big intergenerational community, about 20 kids that come and go, and the neighbors as well. This is a photo of their home. They live in a couple tents and caves. There's the photo of the inside of the cave to give you an idea of what it's like and where the kitchen is. These are their 5 kids that live there that became kind of like my adopted siblings or nieces and nephews. Laith is 5, Fadda just turned 12 the other day, Malik is 1, Muhammad is 7, and Rizq is 13. So the Abu Naim family and most of their neighbors and community are shepherds, which means that the men and the oldest boys are out almost all day from sunrise to sunset with the sheep, and the women and youngest children stay for the most part just at home. And this family they're quite isolated. They live very close to a new settlement outpost, and every day settlers come to either just passively trespass, graze their sheep on the family's land, and sometimes more actively harass them. This is a photo of the road that leads down to their home. The village is up in the hills, kind of beyond the hills to the right, about a half an hour walk up the hill, and they are down in this valley, pretty isolated. There's just this one narrow, very bumpy road that the settlers often graze their sheep across it, or try to cut them off just even with their ATVs and trucks, and cut the family off from the rest of the community. And this is a photo looking in the opposite direction. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's, on the very distant hilltops, there's a settlement you can see, and then a little bit further down the valley, there's a new settlement outpost starting. And every day we can see tractors there adding on to it more and more. And the family would tell me stories of how they used to graze their sheep down in this valley and used to go out for cookouts, even spend the night, go camping. But they haven't been able to go down there for years just because of the continued or increasing presence and encroachment of settlers. It's not safe for them anymore. And the outpost where the settlers come every day to the home is actually even closer. Just it's not shown in this photo. And so because this family is so isolated, a lot of the community comes every day or every evening after work to spend a few hours with them when it's dark to help prevent any further violence. The neighbors would some of the neighboring men would just come and sit with them. We'd all have dinner, drink coffee and tea, and spend a few hours together. It was just a very safe feeling that they all were taking care of each other and being with each other. In particular, the whole community and village rallied behind this family to help them stay on their land. A couple more photos of community members. The ones on the right is the closest neighbors they had. They were about 10, 15-minute walk up closer to town. But I did just hear the other day that this family has decided to move to town and to leave where they live now because the settlers have been coming and trying to steal their sheep and just constant harassment that this other family is tired of. So that will leave the Abu Naim family even more isolated. I want to show a couple videos now to kind of give you a taste of what family life was like. This in particular is a particular evening. Let's see if that works. Or our typical evening. Hanging out and spending time with each other. I know the quality is not great. The majority of my time really was just sweet family time with the family. I'm going to show a few more to give you a taste of what it was like with the You can tell which ones of them had practiced ahead of time and who was just kind of winging it. After we were attacked at night once, I started staying up all night to keep watch and trying to sleep during the day. But very often that was useless because there were kids just crawling all over me all the time. This is Leith.
ربيع بيحكي أنا نصر سيدك معناته لو أنا سيدك معناته أنا عم ربيع.
One day they made a little makeshift playground inside with a piece of tarp. And this is a photo from one of my last nights. They did a little goodbye party where they did a barbecue, played music, all danced. Now that I've given you kind of a snapshot of what the life was like with them, I wanted to talk a bit about what they go through every day. These destroyed tents belong to their other son, Ihem. He was the one playing the flute in the first video. In 2023, he and his family were asleep at night. He has 5 little kids. And settlers came at night and destroyed the tents where they were sleeping and stole their solar panels and some of their belongings. The next day, the military showed up and beat Ihem severely, threatened him, told him that they're not allowed to be there, and after increasing harassment the months following, they decided to just leave and move to town for the sake of their kids, to keep their kids safe. And the ruins of their tents, and these 2 photos you can see, are still very close to, these are about a 5-minute walk from where the family I stayed with lives. And then they have one of their grown daughters as well, Hedaya. She and her family lived in the ruins of these tents. Now, this was just a couple months before I arrived. The military showed up one day and detained some family members, beat others. A couple had to go to the hospital because of their injuries, and basically forced them out of their home here. And the ruins of the tents are still here. We walked past it. It's right next to where the family lived that I was staying with. So Hideh and her family now live in town as well. And so the family I stayed with, Abu Hamam, the grandparents and their eldest son and his kids, they're the last ones down in this valley. About the first or second week after I got there, there was an incident where Hamam, that the oldest son and his kids were out grazing their sheep, and a settler arrived, was trying to accuse him of stealing his sheep. So the settler called the military. The military arrived at the neighbor's house, and so myself and the rest of the family members, we went up to go see what was going on and to where the neighbors were in the military. The military held us there for a couple hours, and by the time we got back, we found our home completely just upended. This is the kitchen. You can see the fridge was pushed over, the cupboard with all the plates and pots and pans, everything in the tent. And then this is a photo of Hamam, the grandmother, just kind of calmly going about making cheese, because that's their livelihood. They make cheese and yogurts and all sorts of dairy products that they sell. Despite the mess, she just kind of calmly went about while the rest of us picked up the mess, because life has to go on, and they're just so resilient and committed to staying on their land despite everything that happens. I'm going to show a couple videos now of different incidents that happened when I was there. My colleague and I that was staying there, we took a few videos to spread on social media and try to raise awareness. And I think these kind of paint a better picture of what it was like, better than me just talking. So I'll let you see these. What is he doing to her? She's going home. She's walking him. Go. Don't tell me to why are you doing this again? I tell you I'm going to stop. Right? Altigabi. Go. Altigabi. What are you doing? What are you doing? Altigabi. Don't touch me. Altigabi.
Get out of here! Get out of here!
Get out of here!
في شيء شو انطلع من هنا يلا نطلع.
Get out!
انطلع من هنا
Get out!
يلا.
It's okay.
Yeah. What's the problem? They broke into that man's house every day, and they were just going inside it. It's his house. He has the papers for it. But he owns this house. He has the papers for it. They broke into it. They cut the lock last night, and he's trying to take his possessions. It's his land. He has the papers for it.
To talk with you. You have 10 seconds to run away.
You need to have a military order of a closed military zone.
Can you order? Who is it?
مش راضيين يحجوا.
يلا. الو مين ده؟ لا זה לא משטרה.
Yes.
Tell him if he's not going now, I'm going to.
You have to explain why. It's his house. Don't tell me what to do. Sir, excuse me, sir. We talked with the police.
Okay,
What do you think you're doing?
Okay.
We talked to the closed military zone order.
I'm telling you to go now. Okay.
The police told us we could be here.
Now. Go away.
This event escalated for a couple more hours, actually, and I don't have video of the rest of it because the military ended up confiscating my phone. But Fatima, the mother of the kids, was arrested and not released until about 2 a.m. until we could send videos via our colleagues elsewhere of the whole incident, showing that she didn't start it, that the settler kids were the ones that started pushing and started the violence. And then a teenager from the village was shot that same day as well. As he was coming down the hill to try to help the family, the military shot up at him and shot him in the torso. So it's just an example of how these things can escalate so quickly. And then the previous video too of the settler on the motorbike who came, he came multiple times and a few times at night as well. And once when I was sleeping outside, he stole my phone, a different phone, kicked me, attacked me, and just kind of a constant aggression, constant harassment coming to the house every day. Let's see, here's one other video, just showing the military show up, just kind of show that they rule the place. For no reason, they just showed up.
Is there a problem?
Okay.
Okay.
Save you from the Arabs.
Why would you need to save me from the Arabs?
A little bit
We need someone to save us from the mustawtaneen, settlers.
You're good?
Yeah, everything's good here. Why are you all coming? We have no problem. Why?
Because we're the idea.
Yes. So why you come? Did you come because there's a problem?
We are Arabi.
I know.
Come we can be everywhere.
No, I know. I'm just curious why. Did you come because it's a problem or just for fun?
For fun.
For fun. Are they looking for something? What?
Where are you? Everywhere.
The U.S.
What you doing here?
Visiting friends. Yes.
What's your names?
Why? I'm not going to tell you their names.
Listen to me. You need to go down. We will be here for a couple of minutes. Alright?
حبيب يلا سلامات
نحن
تحكي عربي؟
بحكي عربي.
هاي مش يعني تسوي لي علي مشاكل يعني هاي المسلمة الكاميرا.
Last video that I just love shows how resilient they are in the face of all this. Little Fadla just was, one day when the settlers came very close, grazing their sheep, she just turned on music, started dancing and laughing, showing that she's not afraid. Anytime that I felt very shaken and wanting to run away, being afraid to hold my ground, I would just look at the women and the children of the family, like how resilient they are, how brave and fearless they are in the face of everything they face every day. So to wrap up, I'll just quickly talk about ways you can get involved if you feel so moved. The main way that they really need people is going in person, which I know is not everyone's situation. I was kind of at a time in my life that it just made sense to go. I had quit a job and had the availability to be there and speak the language. But you don't need to have any particular language skills or skill set. There were actually quite a few retired folks who went. There's a lot of diversity in the people that do go and do this protective presence work. There are risks for sure, like theft, injury. Even a few people have died doing this, but risks for us pale in comparison to those that the Palestinians face daily, and especially for me as a white American, that adds an extra level of privilege. There are other ways to be involved, of course. The BDS movement that some of you may have heard of, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, is really important. Choosing to not buy things from companies that are complicit in the genocide and ethnic cleansing, that really does make a difference. Money speaks. Calling your politicians, going to protests and vigils, every act, large or small, really does count, does make a difference. And I know for the family that I stayed with, there in the West Bank, when they would see photos of protests in Europe and in the US, they were very moved by it because they feel quite abandoned by a lot of the governments of the world. So knowing that the people still do care and are following this meant a lot to them. Just talking about it in the community really is important, making sure we don't forget about it. In particular, what's happening in the West Bank, obviously Gaza is a whole other level of atrocity, but the Israeli government has been taking advantage of the media focus on Gaza to really go full speed ahead with the land theft and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, where I was. Of course, donations are always helpful to different organizations, but there are a lot of ways to be involved that aren't just financial. I've been blown away by the amount of support I've been offered by people since I've gotten back, and when I was there. There are a lot of people who really want to support but can't go themselves in person, and so have offered different types of body work, therapy, different types of support, even places to crash since I've gotten back. Another example is that my younger brother is much techier than I am, and so he was kind of my tech support person before I went, getting my devices, clean and secure, and then also when I was there, every time I had my phone stolen, I would frantically call him, and he'd walk me through what to do. And that was just a huge weight off my shoulders, knowing that I could kind of trust someone else to take care of that aspect of it for me. I had other friends when I was abroad maybe make the time to sit and meditate with me on Zoom, or just all these different ways that people really leaned into their skill set or their interests to support me and others who were able to be there in person and do this work. That being said, while it made for sense for me to go and be there in person in the West Bank, this is very tied to liberation struggles everywhere, and especially here on the local level, there's so much need and so many ways to get involved. It's really all connected. It was really bizarre in June to be facing down the military with their guns and their masks and everything, and to see the news from back home. There's a photo from LA of what was happening this past June, and to really feel like it's not that different. It was a really humbling experience for me to feel the community care there and how they all take care of each other so much. They're all willing, just at the drop of a hat, to go risk their lives for each other if a neighbor or family member or friend is being attacked or at risk. Just countless examples of them all rushing to each other's aid at a moment's notice. And I think we all are learning that here, that you can't always depend on the government or the police force, the authorities to protect us and our communities, and that we really are going to have to rely on each other. And there is, of course, a lot of mutual aid and local support systems built in here, but I think it's, I would really like to incorporate it more in my life here, just the community care since I've gotten back. And I want to talk a little bit too about the emotional and spiritual aspects of it as well. I think it's very easy these days to feel so overwhelmed by all the intense crises happening all over the world and locally as well. It's really easy for myself especially to want to numb out to it and close myself off and retreat. But I've learned a lot in the past years from Joanna Macy, especially when I name her as a teacher. She just passed away this past summer. She lived in Berkeley and was a big systems thinker, ecological activist, and Buddhist scholar. But she talked a lot about facing our despair fully, really feeling into it and not turning away from it, to be brave and really feel into the grief and the suffering and allow that to transform us and shape us, and to hear more clearly what ours is to do in whatever struggle you're called to work on, and to really let the grief and the suffering turn into compassion and feeling connected to each other in it. It just makes it much more bearable. And that sometimes there's a lot of urgency around rushing to fix all these problems, but sometimes just being with each other in it is enough. Sometimes that's all you can do, just witnessing each other's grief and suffering. Like I said, don't want to speak for the whole population, but the Palestinian family that I lived with, it meant a lot to them to know that people on the other side of the world cared, and were following what they were going through. So just to leave you with a couple of reflection questions, I think often looking back in history, different struggles or movements like the civil rights movement or the Holocaust, they can feel very black and white, which side was right and wrong. And I know for myself, learning about them as a kid, I always hoped that I would stand on the right side of history if I had been alive at that time and really risked something and done something to stand up for what I believed in. And often it's harder when you're in the middle of it to really maybe see more clearly what the right thing to do is. So something I'm just asking myself constantly now that I'm back too is what is holding me back from fully engaging in this and taking risks and standing up for what feels right, and for others who are more marginalized than myself. Yeah, and that's all I have. Thank you for listening, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I'm sure some of you have some questions. I have a mic so that other people in the audience can hear you as well as our online audience. What's reflections, reactions, questions that you may have? Yeah, I'll be the roving mic. Sure.
I just wanted to find out how it was that you were chosen to stay with that particular family.
Yeah, I went with an organization called the International Solidarity Movement, ISM, and they have locations, kind of hubs in the different parts of the West Bank where they send volunteers. I started out in Masafir Yatta. If any of you have seen that documentary, No Other Land, that won an Oscar about the situation in the West Bank, that's where that took place. So Masafir Yatta is in the south. It's a big hub of international activism with a lot of activists and groups there. And after about a month there was an opportunity to go. They needed another activist to go up to this family that's quite isolated. And since I speak Arabic and have lived in Egypt and Jordan, so familiar with these cultures, and so it was easier for me to be a little more isolated from the international community and more directly coordinate with the Palestinian activists and family. So it just was kind of a good fit. It came up through basically my connection to that organization. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ellie in the back.
Thank you for the work you do.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
First of all, I worked in mediation locally. And you obviously have very good skills in that arena. Did your NGO train you, or did you come to the place with those skills?
They didn't train in mediation. We had training, they're very strictly nonviolent, so training about that, staying calm, just kind of how to talk to the military, things like that, but not any mediation, no.
And my other question you answered, your Arabic is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Did you come to Egypt with Arabic skills, or did you learn?
It's a long story,
Okay.
but basically I was a very bored, miserable teenager wanting an escape from my life, and so was Googling scholarships for high school students to study abroad, found one that sent me to Egypt before I started college even, to just live with a host family, be immersed. That led to another, which led to another. It was kind of, one step after another. Took me on this whole path that I did not expect. So yeah.
Other questions out here? Oh yeah, David. Got to use the mic.
So yeah, totally. I'm totally impressed and just moved. Yeah, thank you so much for the inspiration. My question has to do with we've actually had relationships ruptured over this issue, and you mentioned it in the beginning. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how to talk to this. We have Jewish friends, so I can't talk to them about this. And, I don't know if the question is specifically, how do I talk to them about it? But just, I find myself not feeling the courage in talking about it, because I don't want to just, in a room of people, all of a sudden create this conflict. So I guess my question is, have you found a way to talk about this? How have you been dealing with that, or how does that come up for you, or has it come up for you?
Yeah, it's a huge question that I'm not an expert in, but yeah, I think really trying to like get out of my head and the urgency and anger I feel about it, right? But like lean into the compassion part of it, and like understanding that everyone I think is coming from a place of fear, and that can activate us so much more. And so trying to just be more in my body and in my emotions and listen and maybe more share my experience, right? It's, yeah, I don't have a good answer necessarily. These are thoughts that are coming to my head, but yeah, I think this part of it is often harder than actually being there on the ground, right? It's like the more sustained relational work. Speaking about it, yeah, it's a good question, but something to talk about with each other. Yeah, I'm learned about it.
Sharon.
Hi, Eli. Thanks so much for sharing your story. I'm curious about the attitudes of the family that you stayed with. What is their hope for a future?
They're hopeful. I'm amazed at how hopeful they are. Every time we talk on the phone still every couple days, do video calls and everything, and they're always just like, hopefully next time you come will be a free Palestine. We're like, inshallah, right? Yeah, they're so, I don't know how, if I was going through that, I'd be gone in a second, right? Every day, this, like, people coming at night and coming on my land. They're just, I think it's a level of relationship to the land that I honestly can't even imagine having. You know, it's like even in my own lifetime, I've lived a couple different places, and my parents, they don't live where they grew up, and their grandparents didn't live where they grew up, and I think in our country, a lot of us are quite disconnected in a lot of ways, and can't imagine even having one full lifetime in one house, right? Whereas these people have lived for countless generations on the same land, and so just a sort of familial and cultural relationship to it. It's like where, even if they could go somewhere else, they don't want to, right? It's like I think that really, I don't want to speak for them, but it feels like a lot of the fearlessness and bravery comes from that maybe. And yeah, the community, the care for each other too, I think felt really, really palpable when I was there. The way everyone just really showed up and even enveloped me into that and cared for me. And if when I was attacked at night once, the neighbors came to visit me the next morning, and the whole community would be like, are you okay, right? Like, come and check on me and take care of me. But you asked if they're hopeful. So they are very hopeful. Yeah, it impresses me a lot. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, Brian.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm just curious, do you have plans for the future to go back, or what do you do next? And I'd be interested, did you mention you have a Facebook or something we could follow you?
I don't have social media, no. I'm kind of a hermit in that way, and also it makes, for activist reasons too, right? You know, when you go to the border, they Google you and all this stuff, so I'm trying to keep a low profile for that reason online. But in terms of going back, I definitely want to go back at some point. I'm still figuring out when, you know, and lots in my life is up in the air right now, but I definitely want to go back soon, yeah.
It would be great to, if you could keep us updated, that we could keep you in our prayers.
Oh, sure, thank you, yeah, thank you for caring.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Any others? I got, all right, first Robert, and then we'll head over here.
Could you speak more into your experience with having to keep a low profile, why you need to keep a low profile, and what are the dangers? You talked about when you go to the border, they Google you. That's something weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to get into, you know, you have to go through Israel's borders to get to the West Bank, and so they do not like activists and do everything they can to prevent activists. Anyone that they think seems slightly suspicious can be taken aside for further interrogation, Googling. They can demand to see your phones and devices, things like that. And so I didn't have too hard a time getting in. They took me aside for further questioning and asked a lot of really aggressive questions and demanded to see my bank accounts for some reason and things like that. But they let me through, obviously. I know others who were detained for maybe 5 hours or more, and others who have been refused. A lot of activists just can't get in. Sometimes it's very much like government institutions here, where it's kind of hit or miss based on who you get, right? If someone's in a really good mood, they could just let you through really easily. If they just want to make your day you know, really difficult, they could just kind of decide, oh, you seem suspicious and refuse you. So I think giving them fewer reasons to suspect me, and if they do decide to like, yeah, Google me and look at whatever social media presence I have online, if it's related to activism around Palestine or other things, that's a pretty big reason that they would refuse to let someone in.
All right, Drew.
Hey, thank you for your time. So I've tried asking questions about this, as it's been in the news a lot lately, and when I ask questions to people that I see like posting online, people that I know, rather than having a discussion or a dialogue, have been labeled as a xenophobe and a white supremacist. And I don't feel like that's the discussion that we would have here, so I just wanted to ask kind of a question that's been kind of preying on my mind over this whole situation. I'm by no means an expert in this. I used a little bit of AI to help draft my question right now. So if you give me a second. So in 1937, 47, 67, 93, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2020, and 2025, 9 times over almost 100 years, the Palestinian or Muslim majority has rejected a two-state solution and opted to continue with status quo. Do you think that may have something to do with the reasons why Israel is so aggressive in their stances? And if not, why?
I really don't want to get too much into politics. It's a huge, really nuanced debate. I'm not a political expert. I have my own views and opinions, but that's not what I want the focus to be on here. So I appreciate the question, and
yeah, it's complicated.
It's quite complicated.
Quite complicated.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Okay. Dixie.
Oh, hi. My question is, thank you once again for all that you've shared with us today. The struggle is so real as we watch this, but then I had to go like deep in the struggle. Okay, and so one of my questions is, their homes are bulldozed and their tents are taken down nightly. Where do they get their water? I don't see water anywhere. So I imagine each day these families have to go somewhere to get water?
This family had a well, but it does often dry up in the summer, so they get it like brought down in a tractor from town.
So it's an effort every day just to get your water. It can be an effort every day just to get your water.
They have big water tanks that they'll fill up. It'll last a few days to a week. But yeah, it's quite water scarce. Yeah.
So their living struggle is, and like bathrooms. I don't imagine these caves have bathrooms like we're all used to.
Mostly little like squat toilets, like a lot of the world.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I can't get phone coverage on the avenues in Napa, but you got phone coverage out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you said like you could call your brother and it was real techie. It's like, that's kind of amazing.
It was a local SIM card that I bought there, so it wasn't my U.S. number or service, but yeah. It's hit or spotty in some areas, you know, it's not full coverage, but there is.
But pretty good coverage.
Yeah, decent.
Which to me is, you can't have water, but you can have phone coverage.
That's the world we live in, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of
it's just
California
like,
too, less water. Right?
I will be thinking of this all day.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Eli, if you could get your brother's phone number for Dixie for tech support, that would be fantastic. Reese.
Hi, Eli. Thank you so much for your work. It's so inspiring. I'm just curious if female advocates have the same kind of role as a male advocate might have?
Yep. Oops. Sorry. There were quite a few. Actually, I think even more female activists on the ground when I was there in different parts of the country. It's an interesting, in some ways, I think it's easier for them to be more integrated into the families that we stay with, because of the gender dynamic. A lot of my time was spent with the women of the home, but there has to be a little bit more distance between us, right? As just in such a sort of gendered society. But yeah, in terms of even like facing down the military and settlers and things, yeah, it was a lot of the female activists were a lot stronger, more resilient, honestly, than a lot of us, and yeah.
All right, thank you. One more question. Rebecca.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm just wondering about any interface that you might do with Jewish communities to share your experience and your wisdom, because I'm wondering how much even liberal Jewish communities know about the reality that you experienced.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of outreach specifically to Jewish communities. There's some activist groups that are include anti-Zionist Jews, like the Jewish Voices for Peace. There are a lot of different anti-Zionist Jewish organizations. One that sends people to do the same protective presence work, the Center for Jewish Nonviolence. But I haven't, since I've gotten back, specifically reached out. If you have suggestions, I'd be happy to talk one-on-one. It's such a sensitive topic. I'm still feeling into the best way to engage. Learning slowly.
Thank you. Let's give him one more round of applause. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but when I saw Eli, facing into armed guards, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is sheer bravery. So way to be a witness, Eli. That's incredible, really incredible. And I want to remind you that that's a very Jesus-y thing to do. We have this wall of witnesses over here who they're not all Christian. They come from different tribes and they have different things that they were passionate about. A lot of you can't see, but John Lewis kind of coined the idea of good trouble. And that's the kind of Jesus trouble that we're called to get into, to stand up for those who need to be stood up for. And I love this quote that Eli offered. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If you do nothing to help those who are experiencing injustice, you are on the side of the oppressor. Let that haunt you, and let it cause you to become creative and curious about how you can, in big and small ways, do something for those who need your voice. You can't all go to the West Bank, but right here in the United States, you can be a vocal advocate for people who are in trouble or who are mistreated simply because of who they are. That's a Jesus thing to do. It got him killed. It got some of these people killed. And yet, that's the kind of lovely work we are called to do, and it's worth it. Thank you so much for coming today. Hope you had a good experience. We'll see you next week.